Since the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran in February, the Strait of Hormuz has become the flashpoint of the regional conflict in the Middle East.
President Trump today repeated his demand for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
A whole civilization could die tonight unless Iran agrees to reopen the critical Strait of Hormuz.
Back in 2019, we actually published a video piece that explained why this narrow strip of waterway has been at the center of tensions between the US and Iran for years. It ended with this line:
"Each run-in has the risk of escalating into war, one that could disrupt the jugular of the global economy in the process."
Now that war is here. Thousands have been killed and millions of lives disrupted as violence has exploded across the region.
All of us on the planet are directly tied to the Strait of Hormuz through inflation, through transport prices, through any imports we get, and also through our food chain.
So let's revisit the Strait of Hormuz to explain why this strip of water has become Iran's most effective weapon to inflict pain on the global economy and take control of the war. 20% of the world's crude oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. A lot of it goes to Asia, but the drop in global supply during the strait's closure has driven up the price of oil to over $100 a barrel at its peak, up from about $70 a barrel before the war. In the US, that means that the national average price of gas has spiked to over $4 a gallon. But it's not just oil that moves through the Strait of Hormuz.
Closing the strait has just cut off a major source of supply of natural resources, so energy resources and fertilizer and metals and sulfur, other products, helium gas that the global economy desperately needs.
And there is still no clear path to reopening it. Iran can't realistically compete with the US and Israel in a direct military confrontation, so their strongest weapon is control over the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz was shockingly easy to close. So the start of the war caused insurance companies to put a hold on insurance for ships moving into the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz. You had this sort of steady pace of, sort of drumbeat of attacks on ships, and that's been enough to keep the strait all but closed to ships that don't have Iran's permission to travel through.
Trump knows that the US and its allies are feeling the pain, and he has swung between different strategies and demands to reopen the strait.
He put out this statement saying if Iran doesn't open it immediately, we're going to bomb oil plants, desalination plants, et cetera, et cetera. And today he's saying really the exact opposite, that we don't need the strait open. It's not our problem.
But Iran seems intent on continuing to use the Strait of Hormuz as a high-value bargaining chip.
They seem to be hanging on to control over the Strait of Hormuz, which in the short run is a major win for them. Oil exports are actually higher now than they've been in a couple of years. For a lot of those exports, Iran will get really high price. All that adds up to a big increase in oil revenues for Iran.
The longer the US holds out, the longer it will shoulder the blame for starving the global economy of essential items.
Nobody knows where Iran's inflection point lies. It's been a remarkable amount of pain that Iran has been able to withstand, keeping the strait closed and kind of keeping the pressure on the global economy to indirectly pressure the United States. I'd say Iran's been remarkably successful in this.
Trump's threats to destroy civilian infrastructure if Iran doesn't permanently reopen the strait might also not be as effective as he thinks they are.
There is very little the U.S. can do, short of a full-scale invasion of the country, to keep that strait open against Iranian political wishes.
Opening the strait wasn't the main U.S. objective when the war started. It was already open. But now that it is closed, Iran can put pressure on the US to back off its stated goals like dismantling or restricting Iran's nuclear program. That could make things tough for Trump as he negotiates over the strait. The president needs an off-ramp for the war in Iran as casualties mount and its unpopularity drags down his approval ratings in a crucial midterm election year.
The US seems to be looking really fairly desperately for ways to extract itself from this. The lowest acceptable solution is just to reopen the strait and get some kind of Iranian agreement to allow ships through there.
However this ends, Iran has proven how essential this waterway is to the well-being of the global economy, and how many losses they're willing to endure just to keep it under their control.